Bahrain normalizes Israeli relations. Signing ceremony is going to be Tuesday, and I think it's going to be like rolled out and rolled into the whole UAE deal with Trump that we haven't covered yet, really, on conflicts of interest. We, I think, talked about maybe a little bit on the final episodes of Foreign Policy Focus, but I thought it'd be an opportunity to talk about, these two deals, which Donald Trump claims, hey, I'm Mr. Art of the Deal man. I got them done. I got the Jews making peace with the Muslims. Am I not just the greatest peace president ever? That's from what I see from the Trump campaign and from the Trump supporters. That's kind of the message that they're trying to spin. So, well, I was just wondering what you think of that.
Yeah, I mean, I do absolutely think that that's how Trump's going to totally campaign on these deals. That, hey, I'm Mr. Deal Maker. It's unfortunate he couldn't make any deals where they really count with, the Russians or the Chinese or Iran or North Korea, where there's all these outstanding hostilities, where that would really make a difference in terms of the politics. However, yeah, he's definitely going to be selling these smaller deals with the UAE and Bahrain and the Israelis. And in both cases here, we have because a lot of Arab states don't recognize Israel at all. They don't formally recognize them, obviously because of the whole Palestine issue. And so it is significant. Before just recently, before the UAE deal, we only had the Egyptians and the Jordanians sort of recognizing the Israelis and having any kind of like real diplomatic ties with them. But now, just recently, we have these other two deals with the UAE and with Bahrain that Trump has apparently helped to broker. I guess Jared Kushner, apparently, his son-in-law, had a big part in brokering both of these. I know he's definitely wanted to take credit for arranging some big Middle East peace deal. But barring that, I guess these are like these more piecemeal ones. He's behind them. However, with the UAE deal, there was actually some controversy over whether it was going to entail that the U.S. would be allowed to sell the UAE, more military gear, namely the F-35 fighter jet. I don't think, though, that with the Bahrain one, that's quite as much of a controversy. Because I think the U.S. has actually toyed with the idea a little bit of selling them to Bahrain before. I know that, like, their king, we gave them like a demonstration flight and we briefed him on them. So I think there has been some interest in possibly making a deal with the Bahrainis over this. So I don't think that'll be quite as controversial as it was with the UAE. However, a very interesting part of this, I think, is that, the Saudis are fairly close with the Bahrainis. And so just how this kind of deal may pave the way toward another deal, like that would be the big, one of the big prize, I guess, would be to, beyond negotiating a deal with the Palestinians and the Israelis, I guess with the Saudis, one of the more powerful Arab Sunni states in the region. And so that, I don't know, this Bahrain deal could be a prelude to something like that, which Trump, I think, has even suggested before. Like, the Saudis might want to join in on this eventually. So that would be, I think, a big deal for sure.
So, I think from my point of view, the kind of analysis that I had with the UAE deal sits with this one, where there's really not like a big peace thing here. It's not like the Bahrainians or the Emiratis were at war with the Israelis a couple months ago, and now there's peace. In fact, Israel in recent years has really cooperated with a lot of the Gulf Arab states in different initiatives, more, kind of covertly, not necessarily overt deals, but it's certainly not open hostilities. I mean, there's still, I think it's the 2002 Arab Peace Initiative that was signed by all these Gulf Arab states that essentially was them aligning with the Palestinians, saying that we're not going to recognize Israel until there's a Palestinian state. And so it wasn't like saying that Israel shouldn't exist. It was saying that Israel shouldn't exist with, half the population as third class subjugated citizens. That was kind of the point, I guess. And, so now we're actually have two countries breaking that, but again, we're not talking about countries that were at war with Israel. We're not talking about a country like Saudi Arabia, and so I think these are more PR wins. And I think the biggest beneficiary is Donald Trump. My guess is that the second winner is Benjamin Netanyahu. I guess the Emiratis win because they get to buy F-35s because they think those are good. I'm sure the Bahrainians get, some kind of kickback on the deal. Maybe they don't get F-35s. Maybe they do. Maybe they, get whatever that they're particularly interested in, or, they cement that, the U.S. Fifth Fleet keeps their base there. There's plenty of interest that they have with staying in the good graces of the U.S. I'm sure it's another country that, I'm guessing that Israel and the Emiratis aren't terrified of an incoming Biden administration. They don't think, oh no, Joe Biden, somebody's going to hold us accountable. They'll get away with what they want. They'll get their weapon sales. But Trump has been particularly friendly, in a lot of ways to these states and their foreign policy objectives. He assassinated Soleimani. That was huge. So we see a lot of responses, and I guess they probably feel like Biden might go back to the JCPOA and take, the possibility of war with Iran off the table. And Trump definitely won't do that. And so I'm guessing that these states are kind of calculating that if they could give Donald Trump a win leading up to the election, it would definitely just benefit them in the long run having Trump versus Biden. Although, like I said, I don't think they're going to cry if Biden wins.
Right, right. And yeah, you were mentioning some about who might have won from this, who might be the winners. And I guess if we have to find who might have lost from this, I think it would probably be the Palestinians for sure. I mean, they've come out, all the Palestinian leadership, both the PA, the Hamas, the PLO, have all come out and said this is a stab in the back. This does grave harm to the Palestinian cause. There's all kinds of responses that Palestinian leadership have had. It's been very similar, in fact, to the response to the UAE deal. And I think the Palestinians largely don't want to see all these other Arab states cozying up and recognizing Israel, because I think they're afraid that they're going to be abandoned, that they won't support them anymore, that, Bahrain and the UAE and maybe Saudi eventually are going to, it's not as if they really heavily support them in the first place, but I think they're afraid that they're just going to totally drop them for the sake of maintaining their newfound relationship with the Israelis. And so I think the Palestinians don't like to see these kind of normalization agreements. Although I should say the Bahrainis and the Israelis and the U.S. put out this joint statement where they did mention the Palestinians. They said, we think this deal will it'll be good for the Palestinian cause and all this stuff. But they're not buying that, I think. I think they're seeing that as total lip service and that they're taking this as a betrayal and a stab in the back, for sure.
Right. You would think for the Palestinians, it will almost be better if they came out and said, we had the cause for some years, but now it's just too profitable to be with the U.S. and Israel. So screw you guys. This is at least then it's transparent. But no, we're helping you out. We're doing something, and it
for you,
right? The de facto leader of the Emirates, Mohammed bin Zayed, MBZ. His point of this was that it delayed or suspended Israeli annexation that Netanyahu wasn't even trying to go forward with anyways. And so they got absolutely nothing for the Palestinians out of this. In fact, I think in a lot of ways it kind of says that the status quo in Israel is at least kind of okay. To say you're going to suspend the current, annexation, and that's a good thing, and not say Israel needs to do a lot more, something like that. I think leaves it and kind of just justifies the de facto annexation that we already have. And so in a lot of ways, this is a bigger loss for the Palestinians, the Emirates, saying that they got something for the Palestinians here rather than just admitting that they screwed them on it.
Right. And I mean, Netanyahu also, he said it's still on the table anyway, too. That right. He may not have been really meaning to do it, immediately, but he's saying, yeah, it's still on the table. So really, we can say that, chalk it up. They got nothing, the Palestinians, from this deal. Either of these deals.
Yeah, I'm guessing we'll start hearing about annexation when it starts to get politically convenient for Netanyahu again. Or maybe if Trump loses during Trump's lame duck period, he may try to ram something through because Biden really won't stand up to Israel, but he might not veto a resolution condemning them or something like that at the UNSC. And even that is just simply intolerable for Israel at this point. Will, are we missing anything else? Any other important stories you want to touch on before we wrap here?
No, I think we hit all the ones that we gathered up.
All right. Well,